When you go inside, just let her know you
Hey, how you doing? Head out.
How the hell did I get here? I'm 40 years old, I'm dressed like the Crypt Keeper, dressed like a slice of pizza. I'm standing in line to take a photo with the real-life voice of the Crypt Keeper, John Kassir, while my friend and business partner Joe films illegally, as it turned out, from a short distance away. I mean, what choices had I made in my life to bring me to this place? And would I ever get a straight answer to a simple question? What is John Kassir's favorite type of pizza? The documentary.
Today, we have one of the all-timers on the show.
This is incredible.
When Brett
We're so
told us,
excited about our guest today!
It all started 20 months ago when, after many attempts across multiple platforms, including actually paying to private message him on Cameo, I finally booked John Kassir as a guest on Double Threat, the podcast I produce hosted by Tom Scharpling and Julie Klausner. This is a year in the making. We have the voice of the Crypt Keeper, John Kassir, is going to be joining us in about 30 minutes here. 30 minutes. And because Tales from the Crypt is a very popular topic of conversation on Double Threat, the anticipation and excitement that day were at an all-time high.
When he signs on, Brett's wearing his Crypt Keeper mask, and that's the first thing you see.
he might just log right off. I picture him popping on the screen. He sees that. He's like, nope.
John Kassir was scheduled to appear at 2 p.m. Pacific time. 10 minutes, by the way. 10 minutes on the Kassir clock.
I'm terrified.
Tom, what are we going to do?
This is my terror.
What if we fall in love?
But 2 p.m. came and went.
I hope he doesn't show up at this point.
I'm scared.
1 minute on the ghosted clock now.
Oh
We're up to 1
my
minute.
God!
And as the seconds ticked by and the seconds turned into minutes, we were forced to accept the truth that John Kassir had ghosted us.
How long has it been?
So we're at 17 minutes on the ghosted clock.
Well, this is the perfect Halloween show because we did get ghosted.
I'm devastated right now. This is truly, I don't know how I'm going to.
I'm having a good time because I feel a sweet release.
Yeah.
John Kassir, you aren't here. John Kassir.
John Kassir, you aren't here.
Hours later, I received an email alert that John Kassir had joined the Zoom meeting. But by the time I opened Zoom to confront him, he was gone again. And I started wondering, is this guy playing a game with us? What kind of game is this? Why just show up for the podcast? I did later receive a lukewarm apology by text that mentioned time zones and having been confused about time zones. Bullshit. Nearly 5 months later, after I poured a heavy guilt trip on his publicist, John Kassir finally made his long-awaited appearance on Double Threat for our 100th episode live stream.
It's him. It's John. Oh my goodness. First of all, look at that hat. Where did
Pretty
you
nice.
get-
This is
Wearing a Tales from the Crypt baseball hat with a brim so large it could barely fit on the screen. Kassir's attitude during the interview could best be described as increasingly confrontational.
Wow, John, are we getting along? I can't tell.
He referred to Julie as Chucky.
which incidentally, you look like Chucky. I'm sure people tell you that with glasses, but
Me?
Yes.
He accused us of interrupting him.
If you guys let me finish your questions, I actually could answer them.
He delivered long-winded monologues that made you forget what the question was in the first place.
I played a Bulgarian field goal kicker named Zagreb Shkeluski. He could kick 60-yard field goals, so he was like, big deal. But he didn't really understand cause and effect, and he just.
And near the end of the interview, Tom asked John a question that, as it turned out, would change the course of my life forever.
What does a John Kassir get on his pizza pie?
This was John Kassir's response.
My mom, my grandmother, and my mom were amazing pizza makers. I mean, they made amazing pizza, the crust. And so I had the recipe for my mom's crust. So I like to make my own pizza. If I'm going to buy a pizza, I like, Italy is one of my favorite places to travel to, and I've been many, many times. And to get a nice, wood oven cooked pizza with anything they'll put on it, which is usually a fresh tomato sauce, fresh cheese, just your basic margarita is great with some bacon or whatever. But, I've had pizza with seafood on it. I've had it with prosciutto and I mean, really, fucking good pizza. But if I'm going to make pizza, I make my own sauce, and there's some special little spices and stuff in there. People are like, what is that spice? And I can't tell you or I'd have to kill you.
Oh, John.
Well, speaking of seafood,
Now you'll notice that nowhere in there does John Kassir actually answer the question. He mentions margarita pizza and seafood pizza and fresh tomato sauce and cheese. What was John Kassir's favorite type of pizza? And why wouldn't he tell us? The question left unanswered like that, it stuck with me. And I'm not going to lie, it started to obsess me a little, and then it eventually haunted me. I really wanted to know what his favorite type of pizza was, and I just was confused why he wouldn't tell us.
Fresh cheese, just your basic margarita is great with some bacon or whatever. But I've had pizza with, really, fucking good pizza.
And then my friend Charles alerted me about an upcoming horror convention in Pasadena called Monsterpalooza, at which John Kassir would be making an appearance. Now, reading Charles' email, I started to think to myself, life is short, and you never know when you're gonna die. So it's important to take these opportunities when they come and grab them with both hands and swing them around with all your might and send that little scamp flying. And so I made my plans to attend Monsterpalooza with the singular goal of asking John Kassir what his favorite type of pizza was, and this time, getting an answer. Now, it was essential to maintain my anonymity at Monsterpalooza in case Kassir or one of his associates recognized me as the producer of Double Threat. I settled on the Crypt Keeper dressed like a slice of pizza because I wanted a costume that would endear me to Kassir while also attracting his pity. That was the key. I wanted him to think that my life and my sanity depended upon knowing the answer to the pizza question, which would presumably compel him to respond. And in a way, maybe my life and my sanity did depend upon knowing the answer to that question. But no journey as uncertain as this one is without its roadblocks. And when I arrived at Monsterpalooza at 6 p.m. sharp, two roadblocks presented themselves immediately. First, the photo op I had scheduled with John Kassir didn't start until 9:55 p.m., which meant that we had nearly 4 hours to kill, we being me and my friends Joe and Gabe. Now, 4 hours is a lot of time to waste without losing your nerve, and I'm not going to lie, I wasn't sure if we'd make it or not. Which leads to the second roadblock. The Crypt Keeper mask that I was wearing had very limited visibility. And I tried to adjust to life inside this crowded convention hall with no peripheral vision, but it was hard. It felt impossible at first. It was like opening your eyes at the bottom of a muddy lake. Shapes and shadows would materialize around me in unpredictable patterns, and the occasional brush by or impact of some unseen object would just leave me with more questions than answers. So I said, get a hold of yourself. Get a hold of yourself in here. And then I concentrated and I put one foot in front of the other. And then again. And then again. Until I was walking like normal and not running into things. And slowly I found myself becoming one with Monsterpalooza. Almost bonded to my surroundings by some invisible force, as though, like The Thing in John Carpenter's The Thing, I was inside the visible world now, pulling its strings towards some greater purpose.
Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens.
It's not exactly what The Thing is about, now that I'm hearing myself say it out loud. But as the night wore on, something even more miraculous happened. I found that I was attracting lots and lots of attention. Whether it was fellow cosplayers complimenting my look, or convention attendees cornering me for a photo, or even vendors roping me into brand-sponsored content for their Instagrams, the name on everyone's tongues was the Pizza Keeper.
Pizza Keeper.
That's what they called me.
Take a picture with the Pizza Keeper.
As though it was a character that had always existed in their minds, as though the combination of Tales from the Crypt and pizza triggered something in their subconscious, some long-lost feeling that they had left behind and now longed to return to.
What time is it?
At last, the clock struck 9:30, and we made our way to John Kassir's booth. Now, as I stood in line, I could see Kassir from a distance. He's signing autographs, he's chatting with each fan for what seemed like minutes. And I thought, this might be pretty easy. But just to be safe, in my head, I was going through all the different variations of things I could say. Ways to get into pizza, ways to steer him to pizza, ways to get back to pizza if we took a little tangent. Apparently, Miguel Nunez Jr., who you might remember played Spider in Return of the Living Dead, he and I had a conversation around this time, which just speaks to how laser-focused I was on Kassir, because I have no memory of what we talked about. And to be honest, that's really disappointing to me. I wish I could have that interaction to do over. But then, just when I thought I was home free, my stomach dropped, because Kassir stood up without warning and started shuffling away from the table with the assistance of a convention volunteer. Now, earlier in the evening, and this is important, it had been announced that keynote guest Robert Englund of Freddy Krueger fame could not attend because of a non-COVID-related illness. And so naturally, I assumed the worst. Either Kassir had fallen ill, or maybe he had just gotten bored and was leaving. I had to make a split-second decision. I decided to tail him. Kassir moved slowly down the convention hallway towards the main exit, and so at first, despite the adrenaline coursing through my body, I had to slow my steps so I wouldn't overtake him. But then, as we neared the exit, the crowd started to thicken, and I worried for a second that I had slowed up too much and was now in danger of losing him. And as I passed through the exit doors, temporarily losing my pizza bucket hat, I swung my head around wildly, trying to locate Kassir inside the narrow, asymmetrical holes that form the eyes of the mask. Luckily, Joe, finally coming in handy, still had eyes on Kassir and pointed me in the right direction. It was just me and Kassir now. No more than 10 yards between us. I matched my pace to his and settled in for what I hoped would be the final leg of this journey. It was one of those frozen in time kind of moments. Everything slowed down. It felt like a dream, like I was running in place in a dream. And I suddenly had the sense that I had reached some pivotal point in my life. Images from my past, I'm not kidding, images from my past flashed before my eyes. I saw the house I grew up in, my childhood pipe dreams of being a professional clown magician, Sid Bream's bottom of the ninth slide in the 1992 National League Championship Series, which I would then recreate in my backyard for months. As all this was happening, I started to wonder, could my life have turned out differently? And of course your brain tells you, well, of course it could have turned out differently. If this or that major event had gone differently, or even if small things along the way had been different, then your life, by extension, would turn out differently. It makes sense. But then something else, something beyond my brain told me that no matter what choices you made in life, no matter what places you moved to or what people you met or what career things you pursued, this is the moment it was all leading to. This is where all the various roads and paths intersected. This moment right here. Or if not this exact moment, at least something a lot like it. Now, the photo ops, as it turned out, were being done in a different building than the autograph signings, and Kassir was simply moving from one place to the other at the scheduled time. He was actually a little early, and so I got in line and waited my turn. The plan was that Joe would film my encounter with Kassir from a distance while I recorded the audio with my phone. But while I was still in line, Joe was eliminated almost effortlessly by a security guard, which left only the audio.
Go ahead next, please. Go ahead next.
Have to learn from the best.
Oh, look at this!
The coolest of the cool.
The Crypt Keeper pepperoni.
Thank you so much.
Hey, you look great.
Thank you.
Man.
Pepperoni's your favorite?
Yeah.
Pepperoni's your favorite.
You look good.
Thank you.
Well, there it was. It was practically over before it began, and I felt myself being shuffled by unseen hands out of the room and away from Kassir. And as I walked to rejoin Joe and Gabe outside, I replayed the brief interaction over and over in my head.
Thank you. Pepperoni's your favorite?
Yeah.
Pepperoni's your favorite?
Thank
I
you.
practically yelled it through the mask. Pepperoni's your favorite? Yeah, he said. Yeah. As in, yeah, pepperoni's my favorite? I mean, look, it wasn't the moment I had hoped for. Kassir didn't lean in and confide in me. He didn't elaborate. There wasn't some great story. I mean, for a self-described fan of fucking good pizza, he didn't even seem to care that much about the question or the answer. And let's be honest, he was probably just referencing the pepperonis on my costume and then trying to end the conversation as soon as possible with the person screaming at him about pepperonis. Yeah, like someone trying to turn off a machine they had never meant to turn on in the first place. But it was an answer. If you read it on a transcript, you'd have no choice but to believe that pepperoni was John Kassir's favorite type of pizza.
Where'd you get the mask at, bro? I found it online.
It would hold up in a court of law, is what I'm saying, if it comes to that. And I was reminded of that scene in Zodiac where Robert Graysmith, played by Jake Gyllenhaal, confronts Arthur Lee Allen, played by John Carroll Lynch, in the hardware store where Allen works. And at this point, Graysmith knows that Allen is the Zodiac killer. He knows it in his bones, but he can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And so instead, he just looks Allen in the eyes and he lets him know that he knows. I know who you are. Now, my interaction with Kassir was in a way the complete opposite of that. I cornered him into what was likely a false confession and then proclaimed to the world that pepperoni was definitely his favorite type of pizza.
Pepperoni! Pepperoni! I got it. He said pepperoni. I feel like $1 million.
And as the adrenaline wore off and I stood in line to buy a pizza slice of my own, my favorite type of pizza is anchovies. They didn't have that. I settled for pepperoni. I wondered, why did I want to know so bad? Why did I care what John Kassir's favorite type of pizza is? Even now, 4 months later, I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I always had this dream that I would discover something new in the world. You know, something previously hidden, like a buried secret or an undeciphered code. Those are my favorite kinds of movies, and I guess I thought maybe at one point in my life I would be able to do that. I would be in that position to add some kind of, you know, even just a footnote to the history of human knowledge. But, you know, it was a dream that I was prepared to give up on before I met John Kassir. I figured I was too old, I was too lacking in expertise. I didn't know any ancient languages, I didn't have access, you know, to any government informants. I didn't see any results, really, on the few occasions that I tried to access the occult. And so I think I was just so desperate for an unanswered question that I took the first one that fell into my lap, never, you know, stopping to think if it was even a question worth asking in the first place, or if anyone would care about the answer. Then again, I still had something. I still had the question. What would I have if I had the answer? I would just have pepperoni, or mushrooms, or anchovies if he has taste. It's like what MacReady realizes at the end of The Thing. When there are no more unknowns, when there are no more questions left to ask, no more mystery left in the world, it means that you're either dead or you're not human anymore. And so the only way to stay alive, the only way to be human, the only way to know that you're human is that you still have questions.
What do we do?
Why don't we just wait here for a little while? See what happens.
And that, I think, is what The Thing is about.
And all at once I knew at once, I knew he needed me. Until Till the day I die, I won't know why I knew